In the distant galaxy of Etherean power and pride ruled more than justice and wisdom. Among the shining worlds of the Orion Crown lived Princess Lyra, heir to one of the oldest alien dynasties in the stars. Her people were proud, tall, and elegant, their minds sharper than machines. They believed that no other race could match their intelligence, especially not the humans. To them, humans were seen as simple creatures, emotional, chaotic, and weak. But one human soldier had become a legend. His name was Captain Rion Cole, a veteran of countless wars. He had led human fleets against empires far stronger and had survived when all odds said he would die. To the aliens, he was strange, a being who fought not for glory, but for something invisible, something they did not understand. That something was willpower. When the Galactic Council announced that a human would be sent to train the young princess of Ethereum, the galaxy laughed. Train her? A human? The alien nobles sneered. What can a primitive creature teach royalty? But the council had made its decision, and soon Rian Cole arrived on the shining palace world. He came not in a royal ship, but in a small, old human craft covered in battle scars. When he stepped out, wearing a plain uniform with no symbols of rank, the guards whispered behind him, "This is the human trainer," they said, laughing under their breath. Princess Lyra stood on the balcony, watching him with cold eyes. She had expected someone grand, a warrior in shining armor, or at least a commander with noble presence. Instead, she saw a tired man with gray at his temples, calm eyes, and a quiet smile. When he bowed before her, she didn't return the gesture. "You are the one who will train me?" she asked, her voice sharp and filled with doubt. Rian looked up at her and nodded slowly. "If you're willing to learn," he said simply. The first day of training began before sunrise. Lyra arrived wearing royal armor, polished and glowing. Rian wore the same old uniform as before. He handed her a wooden staff instead of a weapon. "This is a joke," Lyra said, frowning. "I am not a child." Rian's reply was calm. "A warrior's first weapon is not their blade, but their mind." He told her to attack, and she did, fast and furious. But Rian moved like water, each strike missing by inches. Within minutes, she was on the ground. Frustrated and angry, he offered her his hand, but she refused to take it. Her pride burned hotter than her bruises. Over the next few days, Rian made her unlearn everything she thought she knew. He made her climb cliffs with no armor, run across deserts with no aid, and meditate in silence while storms raged. When she complained, he only said, "Discipline builds strength. Strength without discipline is nothing." Lyra couldn't understand him. Why did this human care so much about silence, about focus, about emotion? Her people had trained her to command armies, to use power freely, but Rian taught her to listen to her heart, to the wind, even to her fear. He said fear was not weakness, but a tool. Each night, Lyra returned to her palace chambers, exhausted and angry. The alien nobles mocked her, saying, "You are wasting your time with that human." Even her advisors whispered, "Princess, humans are born from dirt, not destiny." But Lyra couldn't stop thinking about the human soldier's calm eyes. He never shouted, never boasted, never tried to impress her. He only watched, taught, and corrected with patience. One morning, she asked him, "Why do you do this? Why train someone who doesn't respect you?" Rian looked at her for a long moment before answering. "Respect isn't given," he said quietly. "It's earned. And I'm not training a princess. I'm training a warrior." Those words stayed in her mind, echoing even when she slept. As the days passed, Lyra began to change. She started waking before dawn without being told. Her movements grew faster, her senses sharper. She began to understand what Rian meant when he said, "Strength is not in power, it's in control." She learned to use her anger, not be used by it. And for the first time, Rian smiled. "You're starting to see it," he said softly. "See what?" Lyra asked. "The part of you that doesn't need a crown," he replied. But the piece of training didn't last long. Rumors began to spread, whispers of rebellion, of war beyond the stars. Enemies were moving, watching the young princess train under a human. Some saw her progress as a threat, others as a joke. But none of them understood what was really happening, because in those quiet mornings and endless drills, something powerful was forming. Not just skill, not just strength, but trust. A trust between a human and an alien princess. Something no one in the galaxy believed possible. And in that trust, something ancient began to awaken within Lyra. A spark that would one day shake the stars themselves. Rian knew it, even if she didn't yet. He looked at her one evening after training and said, "You think this is just about learning to fight, but it's not." Lyra frowned. "Then what is it about?" He smiled faintly, his voice low and steady. "It's about becoming someone who can't be broken, no matter what the galaxy throws at you." And as the twin suns set behind them, painting the sky in gold and crimson, Lyra finally understood that her true battle was not with others. It was with herself, and that battle had only just begun. The first 10 days broke the princess. Lyra had never known pain, not like this. Her hands were raw, her legs trembled, her voice gone from shouting in frustration. But every time she fell, Rian only said the same quiet words, again. At first, she hated him for it. In her royal mind, training was about power and honor, not struggle and dirt. But the human never let her take the easy way. He made her climb the steep cliffs of Ethereum's red deserts. He made her cross rivers filled with ice storms. He made her run until her breath burned her chest. When she demanded rest, he said, "Your enemies won't wait for you to feel ready." His tone was never cruel, just steady, unshakable. By the 20th day, Lyra's hands had stopped bleeding. By the 30th, her body no longer screamed from pain. Instead, it adapted, grew stronger, faster. The princess who once walked in gold shoes now trained barefoot in the dust beside a human. She no longer complained, because for the first time in her life, she began to earn her strength. Rian noticed the change. During one evening's rest, he handed her a small cup of human tea. "Why do you do this?" she asked, watching the firelight dance in his eyes. "Why push me so hard?" Rian looked at her for a long moment, his voice calm. "Because comfort is the enemy of greatness," he said. "If you never break, you never rebuild stronger." Lyra stayed quiet, staring at the flames. Somewhere deep inside, those words started to take root. By the 40th day, the alien court had grown restless. They sent spies to observe the humans' methods. One of them, General Vesk, watched from afar and laughed. "He makes her climb rocks like an animal," he said. "Does the human think our princess will win wars with her hands?" But Rian ignored the whispers. He told Lyra, "Let them laugh, it means they haven't learned anything yet." She didn't know it then, but those words would echo across the stars one day. As the days turned to weeks, Rian changed her lessons. He taught her human battle tactics, fast, unpredictable, full of illusion and surprise. He made her lead mock missions with her guards. Every time she failed, he made her find her own mistake. "Don't look for someone to blame," he said. "Look for what you can do better." It was a strange way to think for someone born royal, but slowly, Lyra began to see what made humans dangerous. They learned from failure, they adapted faster than anyone. And now, she was learning the same. By the 60th day, she no longer fought like an alien princess, she fought like a human warrior. Her moves were sharp, her instincts fast. Even her royal guards could no longer keep up with her in combat drills. When she defeated 3 of them at once, Rian only nodded. "You're learning control," he said, "but power without purpose is still chaos." One evening, during a rare moment of rest, Lyra asked him, "What makes humans so different?" Rian smiled, a faint, tired smile. "We fight for things that can't be measured," he said. "For home, for family, for one another." Lyra tilted her head, confused. "Even when you know you'll lose." "Especially then," Rian said. "That's when it matters most." Lyra didn't understand it fully, but she could feel it. That strange warmth in her chest whenever Rian spoke. It wasn't weakness. It was something she'd never known before. Belief. By the 80th day, she could run 10 miles without rest. She could disarm Rian in combat, though never fully defeat him. He always seemed one step ahead, as if he already knew her next move before she did. One night after training, she asked, "How do you always know?" Rian chuckled softly. "Because I'm not watching your weapon, I'm watching your will." Lyra frowned. "My will?" "Yes," he said. "A true fighter moves where their heart goes. The rest just follows." She didn't reply, but those words struck deep. The next morning, she woke before sunrise and went to train alone. For the first time, Rian wasn't there to guide her. She practiced his lessons again and again, not to impress him, but to master herself. When he found her later, drenched in sweat and breathing hard, he smiled. "You finally understand," he said. Lyra looked up at him, confused. "Understand? What?" "That the greatest battles are fought inside," Rian said quietly, "and you're winning yours." By the 90th day, the rumors had grown louder. across the galaxy. Leaders whispered about the alien princess training under a human. Some called it madness, others called it betrayal. But a very few, began to feel something new. Fear, because those who watched her progress saw what she was becoming. Something neither alien nor human. Something more. On the 99th day, Rian took her to the edge of the training grounds, a mountain peak overlooking the endless desert. "This is it," he said. "Tomorrow, your final test." Lyra looked at him, her eyes calm and focused. "What will it be?" she asked. Rion didn't answer. He simply turned toward the horizon, where dark clouds were gathering. "You'll find out," he said quietly. "Just be ready for anything." That night, Lyra couldn't sleep. She stared out at the stars, remembering how far she had come, from a spoiled royal child to a fighter who no longer feared pain. But deep inside, she knew something big was coming, something that would decide everything. The next morning, before dawn, the alarms of the palace screamed, explosions shook the sky, and ships fell from orbit in flames. Lyra ran outside and saw the impossible, an entire enemy fleet descending on her world. And as her people panicked, her heart went cold. Rian stood beside her, calm as ever. "The test begins now," he said, looking at the falling ships. "Let's see what the galaxy's new warrior can really do." The sky burned red that morning. The people of Etherian looked up in terror as fire streaked across the clouds. Dozens of warships cut through the atmosphere, their shadows darkening the golden towers of the capital. The alarms screamed louder than thunder, echoing across the city. The invasion had begun. Lyra stood beside Rion on the high cliffs above the palace. Her heart pounded in her chest. "It's the Vaughn Empire," Rion said quietly, his eyes scanning the horizon. "They've come for your world." Lyra felt the old fear rising inside her, the kind she thought she had buried during her training. But Rian's calm voice anchored her. "This is your test," he said, "not one I planned, but one the galaxy has chosen." Down below, chaos spread like wildfire. Civilians ran for shelter. Soldiers shouted orders, but there was no leadership, no control. The generals panicked, and the royal council demanded retreat. Lyra heard them through her comms, their voices trembling with fear. "Your Highness, escape to the eastern bunker," they cried, but Lyra turned off the channel. "No," she said, her voice steady. "We fight." Rian looked at her, proud but silent. He saw the steel in her eyes, the same strength he had been building for 100 days. "Then we do it your way," he said. "Show them what you've learned." Within minutes, Lyra took command of a small defense squad, barely 50 soldiers. They were frightened, uncoordinated, and unsure of their new leader, but Lyra stood before them with confidence. Her voice carried across the winds. Calm, but strong. "We are not fighting for pride or power," she said. "We fight for our home, for each other." Her words struck something deep inside them, the kind of hope only a leader could awaken. Rian led her to the front line. "Remember what I taught you," he said. "The enemy's strength is their arrogance. Use it." Lyra nodded, gripping her weapon tightly. When the first Vaughn dropships landed, the ground shook. Dozens of armored invaders poured out, their war cries echoing through the smoke. The aliens of Etherian had never faced a real war in centuries, but Lyra was no longer the same princess. She moved with speed and precision. Her soldiers followed her every command, every formation. Every trap was a reflection of Rion's teachings. She made them fight in small, fast-moving teams, human-style tactics, hit and vanish, strike and retreat. The Vaughn soldiers grew frustrated as their overwhelming numbers became useless. One by one, their squads fell apart. High above, Rian coordinated their movements through his old human combat interface. "Sector 4, fall back 50 meters," he ordered calmly. "Sector 2, push from the left." His voice was steady even as explosions shook the valley. Lyra heard him through the comm and found strength in that sound. For the first time, she wasn't afraid. Hours passed. Smoke covered the horizon, and the palace towers burned, but the enemy advance slowed. Lyra fought side by side with her people, her armor dented, her face streaked with ash. When her soldiers began to lose hope, she shouted, "We are Etherian, and today, we show them that a human's strength lives in us too." The words echoed like thunder. Even Rian smiled hearing them. The student had truly become a warrior. By nightfall, the Vaughn commander grew desperate. He ordered all his ships to fire on the capital. No mercy. The sky exploded with fire. One blast struck near Rion's position. throwing him to the ground. Lyra saw it happen through the smoke. "Rian!" she screamed, running toward the explosion. The comms filled with static, then silence. She reached the crater. Coughing through the dust, his gear was scattered, flames around him. She fell to her knees, searching, calling his name, but there was no answer. Only the burning light of battle. Her heart ached, but she remembered his words. "Don't stop when you're afraid. Stop when it's over." So she stood, clenched her weapon, and turned back toward the fight. Tears burned in her eyes, but her will burned brighter with a final rally. She led the last charge against the Vaughn flagship. Her ships struck from below while ground troops attacked from the cliffs. Every move was part of Rian's strategy, fast, unpredictable, human. The Vaughn fleet began to fall apart under her command. Their leader tried to retreat, but Lyra's fighters surrounded him. The final explosion lit the sky like a new sun. And just like that, the invasion was over. Silence fell across the battlefield. Only the sound of wind and fire remained. Her people stared at her, the young princess who had led them to victory. Some knelt, others whispered her name with awe. No one laughed at the human anymore, but Lyra didn't smile. She walked back to the ruins where she had last seen Rian. There was no body, no trace, only a small metal insignia, the mark of his human army. She picked it up and held it close, her voice trembling. "You taught me everything," she whispered, "but you didn't teach me how to lose." That night, as the fires of war faded, Lyra stood alone beneath the stars. The galaxy had changed forever, and somewhere in the cold silence of space, a faint human signal flickered once before vanishing. The student had become a legend, but her teacher was gone, and the war was only the beginning. The war was over, but the silence that followed felt heavier than any battle. The skies of Etherian were dark with smoke, cities burned, towers broken, and millions of lives changed forever. Among the ruins stood Princess Lyra, her armor cracked, her crown gone, but her eyes steady. She had won the impossible war, but at a cost she could not bear. For 3 days she searched through the ashes for Rian Cole. Every squad, every survivor asked the same question. Did the human live? No one knew. Only his insignia remained, a small, silver emblem marked with Earth's forgotten crest. Lyra carried it with her everywhere. It became a symbol not of loss, but of promise. The galaxy watched in disbelief. An alien princess, trained by a human, had defeated the Vaughn Empire's elite fleet. News spread like wildfire through the stars. At first, they mocked the story, calling it impossible, but soon the laughter faded, replaced by silence, and then respect. Lyra became more than a leader. She became a living symbol of what Rian had always believed, that strength was not about where you came from, but what you chose to become. She rebuilt Etherian, not with pride, but with purpose. Every ruined district was turned into training grounds for the next generation, but her training was different now. No more golden halls or noble speeches. Instead, she taught her soldiers the same way Rian had taught her, through struggle, patience, and trust. Each morning before dawn, she trained beside them. No titles, no servants, no crown, only sweat, dirt, and the rising sun. When someone asked her why she did it, she answered quietly, "Because a human once taught me that leaders walk where their people walk." By the 50th day of rebuilding, the galaxy began to change. Other planets, once divided by pride, started to listen to her voice. They called her the Star Queen, a title she never accepted. "I am not a queen," she said. "I am a student who still has much to learn, but deep inside." Lyra knew her teacher's voice would never return. Every time she looked at the stars, she imagined Rian standing somewhere among them, watching, guiding, proud but silent. Sometimes she even spoke to him. "You said fear is not weakness," she whispered one night. "Then why am I still afraid of forgetting you?" Her advisors pushed her to take the throne officially. They wanted grand ceremonies, banners, and songs, but Lyra refused. "I will not sit on a throne built on ashes," she said. "Not until every world that burns finds peace." And so she began her greatest mission, uniting worlds that had been enemies for centuries. It was not easy. Many alien leaders still doubted her. They remembered her as the spoiled princess trained by a human. But when she spoke, they listened. Her words carried something rare, truth. "I saw strength in a man who had nothing but his will," she told them, "and if a human can change a princess, imagine what we can become together." Slowly, one by one, they joined her alliance, the Human Federation. the Zellery clans, even the surviving Vaughn colonies. They gathered under one banner, not of conquest, but of hope. Lyra named it the Unity Pact. Its emblem was a circle of stars with a small silver insignia in the center, the mark of Rion Cole. Years passed, the galaxy entered a golden age of peace. Trade routes opened, knowledge shared, wars ended, but Lyra never stopped searching. In secret, she sent long-range probes into deep space, following faint energy signals that matched old human frequencies. Each time they returned with nothing. But on the 10th year, something changed. A single probe came back damaged. Its black box held a recording only a few seconds long. A voice crackled through the static. "Lyra, if you're hearing this, then you've done it." The signal ended there, but Lyra knew that voice. Her heart stopped. Her breath caught in her throat. It was him. She called her council, but told them nothing. Instead, she looked out at the stars and smiled for the first time in years. "You always said the galaxy would test me," she whispered. "Well, maybe it's not done yet." That night, the lights of Etherian glowed brighter than ever. Her people celebrated another year of peace. But their queen, the warrior, once trained by a human, was already planning her next journey. Somewhere beyond the edge of known space, a faint signal still pulsed, repeating every hour. It was weak, nearly lost to time, but Lyra could hear it in her heart. The student who had become a legend was ready to find her teacher again, and this time, the entire galaxy would follow her lead. The stars had never looked so alive. From the bridge of her flagship, Lyra watched the endless sea of light stretching before her. It had been 10 years since the war, 10 years since she had last seen her human teacher, 10 years since that single word from the void, Lyra. It was enough to ignite her heart again. She had prepared for this journey quietly. No parades, no royal send-off, just her and a small crew of explorers who believed in her dream. Their mission was simple: to follow the signal to its end, to find the man who had changed the galaxy. They traveled for months through forgotten sectors and silent systems, past broken satellites, dead colonies, and ancient war relics. Everywhere they went, Lyra saw traces of humanity: old outposts, carved words, faded flags. It felt as if Rian's people had left messages scattered across time, reminders of who they were and who she had become. The crew grew restless. Some said the signal was just an echo, a glitch from the past, but Lyra refused to turn back. Her eyes were calm, her voice steady. "If there's even one chance he's out there, I'll find him," she said. On the 127th day, their scanners caught something, a faint energy signature coming from an uncharted system at the edge of the Orion Rift. They followed it through storms of radiation and fields of debris until they saw it, a small lonely planet orbiting a dying star. Its surface was quiet, covered in silver dust and frozen wind, and at its center, a single signal pulsed. Slow but constant, Lyra landed alone. The wind howled against her armor as she walked across the wasteland. Each step echoed in the silence of the dead world. The beacon was buried beneath layers of ice and rock. When she uncovered it, a light flickered, weak but alive. Then, a voice broke through the static. "Lyra, I knew you'd come." Her breath stopped. She turned, and there he was, Rian Cole, older, worn, his hair streaked with silver, his uniform faded, but his eyes were the same, calm, steady, unbroken. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence between them said more than words ever could. Finally, Lyra smiled, tears in her eyes. "You left without saying goodbye," she said softly. Rian chuckled faintly. "I didn't think goodbye would stop you." She stepped closer, touching the small insignia still hanging from his neck, identical to the one she had carried for years. "You were alive all this time," she whispered. "I was," he said, "watching, waiting, hoping you'd do exactly what you did." Lyra looked around at the barren world. "You stayed here?" Rian nodded. "After the battle, my ship went down here. No one could find me, but the signal, I kept it running. A teacher's last lesson." She frowned. "Lesson?" Rian smiled gently. "That greatness doesn't come from being followed. It comes from being remembered." Tears slipped down her cheeks as she laughed quietly. "I rebuilt the galaxy because of you," she said. "They call it the Unity Pact." Rian's eyes softened. "You rebuilt it because of you, Lyra," he said. "I just showed you where to start." They stood together, watching the pale sun rise over the frozen hills. No music, no crowds, no armies, just two souls bound by the fire of change. Lyra turned to him, her voice trembling. "Will you come back with me?" Rian looked out toward the horizon and smiled faintly. "My time is done, princess," he said. "The galaxy doesn't need a soldier anymore. It has you." She tried to speak, but he raised a hand. "Remember what I told you on the first day?" Lyra nodded, whispering, "A warrior's first weapon is not their blade, but their mind." He smiled, proud and peaceful. "Then you remember everything." A soft wind swept across the plain, and as the light grew brighter, Rian's form began to fade, not in pain, not in fear, but in peace. He had become one with the signal. A voice carried forever through the stars. Lyra stood alone once more, but this time she didn't feel lost. She felt stronger than ever. She looked up at the sky, whispering, "You were right, Rian. The greatest weapon is purpose." When she returned to her ship, her crew waited silently. They could see it in her eyes, the calm of a leader who had found what she was searching for. She gave the order to set course for home. As the engines roared to life, she looked one last time at the dying star. A faint glimmer flickered there, a single light pulsing in rhythm. Her crew asked, "What is that signal, Your Highness?" Lyra smiled. "It's not a signal," she said softly. "It's a heartbeat." And so, the student who once learned from a human returned as the legend who united the stars. The galaxy that had laughed now told her story in every language. They spoke of the human who trained a princess, and the princess who became a queen, not through power, but through purpose. They called her Lyra the Unbroken, and they called him Rion Cole, the Teacher of Worlds. Together, their story lived forever in the pulse of the stars, because even when time fades and galaxies fall silent, some lessons never die, they just keep shining, one heartbeat at a time. Asterisk.